Okay, we're going to do some finger knitting. So fingers instead of needles, and we're going to use some Lion Brand yarn. The super bulky 6 size is a good size to work with. And we are going to start by measuring out about 2 feet of yarn here. And then do our slip knot. Get that loop on our finger. Okay. And we are going to have our tail end be, so here's our tail end, that's going to be on the left side, and our ball end on the right side. And that's the end that's going to make our loops on the finger. So that's going to give us plenty to work with. So we take our 2 legs here and put your fingers between the 2 legs and then rock that down so it makes a V down between your 2 fingers. It's hard to show you and keep it on my finger here. And each time we do our cast on, we're going to go to the outside, pick that up, and then grab the other one that's around our finger and pull it up and tighten the loop there. We don't want this too tight, obviously. And again, my fingers are in the middle of those 2 legs. Rock it down so I can pick up the outside, grab the loop, and pull it. So we're taking up the slack. It doesn't need to be tight. And just keep doing that until we get as many stitches as you would like or can fit on your finger. Okay, so there's 15. So on your average size finger, 2 feet of yarn on that left side should allow you to get about 15 stitches. Okay, so without using needles, we're now going to transfer this to our other hand or other finger. And each time we do this, if you imagine looking at the loop here, we're going to pull from the back side of the loop. And we're going to push our yarn through that loop. And each time we do this, we're also going to keep the yarn facing this other direction, opposite the way we're going. So we're going to pull that off of our finger. And here you can see the yarn is the tail end, or the ball end. It's facing that way, and we put it on the other finger here. Okay? So each time we take it off and then push the loop through and put it on. Okay, so the last stitch of the row, push it through, and there we are. So now we're going to put it on the other finger, so this time the yarn, the tail will always be going that way. So again, we pull off the back, put it on the next finger, with the yarn going the opposite of the way the stitches are. Okay, so looking on this side, you can see all the purls, and on this side, I actually have knit stitches. This all, you can see that it's a very nice wide scarf. So where the traditional finger knitting, that's more like loom knitting, you get maybe 4 stitches because you have 4 fingers. This way we're doing 15, so quite a bit more, And if I were to take this off my fingers, we'd see that this is a good 9-inch wide scarf or so. So it doesn't take much time, and at this size, this gauge, it's fairly tight. So it's not like arm knitting. It's not going to be quite so loose and kind of crazy. So it's going to be, it's not a really tight knit, but it still holds together quite well. So here you can see this is 15 stitches and all done on the fingers, so you can get a good fabric, nice width, and it's quite doable. So the gauge is not really tight, but it's not terribly loose as well. And it was all done in purl stitches, and going back and forth, you don't flip sides. It's always the same, so it works out pretty good. There you go. That's finger knitting. Let's see what it takes to do a traditional knit stitch. So I'm going to flip my yarn. Let's see, ball of yarn here, to the other side, the back side. And each time I do a knit stitch, I'm instead going to pull that loop through the back side and up onto my finger to make the knit stitch. Okay, so this is not terribly hard, but it's just a little bit different than the purl stitch. You can see that I'm still keeping my ball end of the yarn facing that opposite direction. So I just need to make sure that each time I come from the back of the loop. Here I'm going to continue showing you how to do some knit stitches. So again, I'm going to have my yarn on the back side of the work. And I'm going to, each time I pull up the loop, I'm going to put the yarn through the back side and put it on my finger. And you can see the yarn is still trailing out the opposite direction. So each time I'm just picking up that loop, pulling it through the back side. And if you always purl one direction and knit the other direction, it's easy to keep track of which stitch you should be doing when. So here we're purling to the right. And now at the end, I'll just let the yarn go to the back side. And I'll knit, moving the stitches to the left. Of course, the garter stitch is going to give you your flattest laying scarf. Be more impressive. You can get a wide length scarf with just your fingers. And now that we've knit a row, you can go back to purling the other direction. Just bring the yarn to the front and start my purling row going the other way. Okay, the next little bit of helpful information here is what to do when you're tired of having something on your finger and need to do something else. So here I have some line, and this is actually plastic line from a weed eater spool. So just like you'd use to trim your grass. So it comes in a spool, and you'll notice that this particular feed is round in its cross section, and it's smooth and easy to bend, and it looks just like the kind of plastic that goes between circular needles. So you just have a length of this. This length about 2 feet long, and you thread it in through your finger here, and you can kind of move the loops off of your finger as you feed it through, close to your finger there. Make sure you have them all on there, and then you can put the two ends together and then feed them through a cable lock, and there you have your stitches safely on, so you can look at where you are or take it off and hold it without your fingers. And then when you go to put it back on your fingers again, you just have to watch which end you ended with. So because the yarn is here out the right side, that means that it would have been that I ended with my finger on the right side. You don't want to be trapped with the end of the yarn on the wrong finger. So we take off the spool here, and then just fit your finger back onto the loops. And that little bit of weed eater line helps you keep those loops open. Sometimes you'll have to pull them back up. Like here you can see it's gotten kind of small. If it's stretched, just pull it back up onto your finger. And there's the last one. And simply pull out the line, and you're ready to go again. So here it is correctly with the end of the yarn. And you can pull that tighter again, so you can make sure that you get a nice tight ending on your row here. Okay, we're at the point where I have just about 6 feet of yarn left, and I think it takes about 4 to do a row, so I'm going to go ahead and bind off on this. And I've been doing garter stitch, so I'm going to do a knit row. So let's go ahead and pull up our first knit stitch, and then we do our next knit stitch. And now on the second knit stitch that I did, I want to push it through the first knit stitch and put it back on my finger. And then we'll go ahead and do another knit stitch, and again we'll pull that one that we just did through the last one that we did, and do another knit stitch, and pull the one we just did through the last one we did. And each time I do it, you can see that it's closing off that row. I want to make sure it doesn't get too tight as I do it. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is going to be a twisted stitch. This is when I first started doing the finger knitting, I did this by mistake, but it actually works very nicely for closing up the larger gauge. So our rule has been, if we're purling, that we pull the legs off of our finger facing us, so we're pulling it from that back side and going back onto the next finger, just like this. Okay, so we never see its back side. But if you don't follow that rule, you instead pull it from the front side off your finger and put on the new loop, you're going to get a twisted stitch. So this time, and you may find that this is more natural to what your fingers want to do with the yarn as you move it off your finger. So each time pushing that front side, that's pretty easy to just push off with your one thumb and put the new stitch on from that front. So push, and you can see right there, that's that twist happening. As you push it off the front, it makes that little crossover. That's going to make our loops tighter on our end fabric. So there you can see on the twisted stitches that nice herringbone pattern.